Over the last couple of years, India did something huge. It became one of the biggest buyers of discounted Russian oil in the world, a move that saved the country billions and billions of dollars. But this story, well, it's got layers. We're talking geopolitics, massive profits, and a really big question that affects literally hundreds of millions of people. Okay, let's get into it.
You've probably noticed it, right? Every time you go to fill up your tank, the country was getting this incredible deal on crude oil. But for some reason, the prices we were paying at the pump, they didn't really seem to drop all that much. So it makes you wonder, if we, the consumers, didn't get that discount, who did? That's exactly what we're going to unpack.
All right. To really understand how we got to this point, we need to rewind the clock back to early 2022, because a massive shift on the world stage created this unique and, let's be honest, pretty controversial economic opportunity.
So when the conflict in Ukraine started, it threw the world's energy markets into chaos. It completely redrew the map of who buys oil from whom. As Western sanctions came down, it created what one report called a tangled web, and supply chains got messy. But in the middle of all this, India saw an opening. It stepped up to become this crucial trade connector, buying up enormous amounts of Russian crude that suddenly a lot of other countries couldn't or wouldn't touch.
Now, this wasn't just some simple shopping trip. This was a massive strategic decision. By choosing to buy this discounted crude, India was putting its own energy security first, right at a time when the world felt incredibly unstable. And that single choice sent shockwaves through the entire global economy.
So we know India saved a ton of money on its national import bill. The obvious next question is, where did all those billions of dollars actually go? Let's follow the money.
And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the matter. When a whole country saves that much cash, that value has to pop up somewhere in the economy. So was it passed down to you and me? Did the government hang on to it? Or did it end up somewhere else entirely?
Okay, so here's where we start to get some answers. The government definitely saw a piece of the action. Tax revenues went up, which helped manage the national fiscal deficit. You know, that gap between what the government earns and what it spends. But that wasn't where the real jackpot was. Nope. The lion's share, that went to one very specific, very powerful industry. And here it is. The main group that benefited from all that cheap Russian oil wasn't the government, and it wasn't the average person. It was India's huge and incredibly advanced oil refining industry. You see, India is home to some of the most sophisticated oil refineries on the entire planet. We're talking about these massive, high-tech facilities run by private giants and state-owned powerhouses, and their technical skill gives them a serious edge over the competition.
This quote might sound a little technical, but it gets right to the point. That phrase, higher middle distillate yields, is just a fancy way of saying they are incredibly good at turning cheaper, lower quality crude oil into super valuable products like diesel and jet fuel. So think about it. They were buying their main ingredient at a huge discount and then using their high-tech kitchens to turn it into premium products. The profit margins were just massive.
But this is where the story gets really interesting and kind of ironic. You'd probably assume all this freshly refined fuel was used to power India's cars and factories. Well, that's not quite what happened.
Here's the plot twist. A huge chunk of this fuel was never actually intended for the Indian market at all. India basically became this giant processing hub in the middle of the world. Cheap Russian oil flowed in one side, it got transformed in India's top-tier refineries, and then it flowed right back out the other side as high-priced gasoline and diesel.
And who were the biggest buyers? You guessed it, the United States and Europe. The same places that put sanctions on Russian oil in the first place were now buying it back from India in its refined form. Because their old supply chains were broken, they needed a new, reliable source, and India was ready and waiting.
So when the Indian government saw these gigantic, unexpected profits being made, they stepped in with something called a windfall tax. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Imagine a baker gets a surprise delivery of free strawberries. She keeps selling her strawberry cakes for the same high price and is suddenly making a huge, unexpected profit. A windfall tax is basically the government walking in and saying, hey, that's an amazing bonus you've got there. We're just going to take an extra slice of that unexpected profit for the public good.
Which brings us to the big debate. How should we look at this whole situation? Was it a paradox where big corporations got rich while citizens didn't see the benefit? Or was it a strategic masterstroke that kept the entire national economy afloat? Let's break down both arguments.
So you've got two completely different ways of seeing this. On one hand, you have the paradox view. It says that private companies made record-breaking profits selling fuel overseas, while ordinary Indian citizens got very little relief at the pump. But on the other hand, you have the masterstroke argument. This view says the government was playing a much bigger, long-term game. The main goal wasn't just cheaper gas today. It was about protecting the entire Indian economy from a massive global shock.
And the people who support this masterstroke view have some pretty strong points. They argue that by cutting the oil import bill so dramatically, it protected the value of the rupee. It helped control inflation, stopping a huge spike in energy costs from making everything else more expensive. It also turned India into an energy exporting superpower, bringing in tons of valuable foreign currency. And remember those windfall taxes? All that money was funneled right back into the national budget.
And there's data to back this up. Numbers from EY show that consumer price inflation, that's the speed at which prices for everyday things go up, actually dropped to an 11-month low of 4.8% in April 2024. And the report specifically points out that this was partly because of downward pressure from petroleum products. This suggests the strategy to control fuel costs at a national level really did help tame inflation for everyone.
So that's where we land. It's a classic economic dilemma. Do you go for a direct subsidy, giving people immediate relief in their pockets, but maybe straining the country's finances? Or do you play the long game, a broader strategy that stabilizes the whole economy, protects the currency, and fights inflation, even if it means big companies get the most direct benefit? There's no simple, easy answer here. It really makes you think, what would you have chosen?